The Coach Curl podcast is brought to you by Think and Grow Business, the home of the Think and Grow Business Mastermind. If you're serious about growing your business, get serious and join a mastermind group today. Find out more at thinkandgrowbusiness.com.au.
Way to go, guys. Way to go. Keep it going. Good job, guys. All right, Paul. I see you. All right, John. Finish on. Coach Cole.
Hey there and welcome. It's episode 177 of today's Leader, the Coach Curl podcast. Now, I'm coming to you today. It's Wednesday the 18th of March, and the world is a vastly different world today than what it was yesterday, let alone last week, let alone the last time we put together a podcast. Now, the last time, episode 176 of the Coach Call Today's Leaders podcast I was actually in Japan. And I was there in Japan I planned to be in Japan to run the Tokyo Marathon. But as we found out 2 weeks before the event, the event had been cancelled due to this thing called the coronavirus. And at the time, whether my mindset was thinking, well, there's not much to this thing, but ultimately we still went to Tokyo. Sharon and I spent a wonderful week in Tokyo, and we saw some of the extent that the government of Japan was putting in place. You know, they had closed effectively all of their major attractions on the 29th of February, which was the day after we landed. Things like observatories, Tokyo, Disneyland, etc., they're all closed. But we still had an amazing, culturally immersive time, but you can see the sense in which the population takes their own personal hygiene and the spread of disease. When you've got millions on the subway each and every day, and probably 70% of the people were wearing face masks, and that sort of indicated that they take this stuff pretty seriously. So it was really interesting, some of the what I would call scare concepts that I heard coming from Australia. So we had some friends that sent us a Facebook message saying there's a 14-day quarantine that you're going to have to do. They're stopping flights to Japan. Japan was never the problem because the government had already taken the steps that we see people are taking all around the world now. But it was just rumours, innuendo, and fear and anxiety that was breeding things like that. Now, what we're seeing now is that, and I've had a huge interest in the rate of infection in Japan, as well as how it correlates and how it relates back to the Australian rate of infection. And it's really interesting that at the moment, on today, the 18th of March, I think the Australian rate of infection, which is the amount of cases per million in population, is almost, it's at least 2.5 times what it is in Japan. Now, when you're thinking about 126 million people in Japan, and Australia has 26 million, you can see that while there may be more cases in Japan, the odds of getting the virus, it's actually less so in Japan than what it is here in Australia. But what we're seeing is that the world is trying to control the COVID-19, the coronavirus, and it seems to be spreading at a faster rate. And maybe those initial thoughts that I had, that it was all just a runny nose, and why are we cancelling the Tokyo Marathon, the marathon that I'd trained 16 weeks to run. Maybe those thoughts have changed, because ultimately what it is, while the disease or the virus itself may not be necessarily something that is going to destabilise or kill a healthy human being in that young to mid-aged bracket, the chance of infecting someone that's vulnerable is the thing that it's got to stop. And stopping the strain on our medical framework is also our health framework is something that has to happen by stopping the spread of disease. So we're seeing today, we're seeing things like gatherings that have been stopped. We're seeing places like New York that are in lockdown or shut down. Any unnecessary gathering over, I think the number is now 50. Here in Australia, for example, is just banned. You're just not allowed to do it. You're seeing mandatory 14-day quarantine periods for people coming back into Australia. And we're seeing airlines themselves shutting international travel. Now, I never thought we'd see this. But this is how the world is responding to this particular virus. Now, at the time of this podcast, there were over 198,000 recorded cases of coronavirus, of which 82,000 had recovered. Here in Australia, our numbers, the latest numbers that I could get, 539 cases, an increase of 82 today. Unfortunately, 6 people have passed away. But concerningly, we've only had 27 people recover from from the virus as yet. 27. So the virus is still active. And, when they're talking stats, they're talking about confirmed cases. So these are people that have had the test done. Now, places like the US, the amount of testing that's being done is ridiculously slow compared with countries like South Korea and Italy, for example. And I'm not privy to anyone that's been in my network or in my immediate or in the next or in the Ripple networks that we all have that has been tested for coronavirus. So I don't know. I think the test is readily available. I'm hearing anecdotes that people are going to the doctors with the flu and being told that they can't be tested. So these are only confirmed cases. So in Australia, 539, the latest numbers, an increase of 82 today, and concerningly, we've only had 27 recoveries. Now, the fear and the anxiety is present, not just here in Australia, but everywhere in the world. And what we used to see just last week or the week before or 3 weeks ago as normal life has been replaced by panic buying, fear and anxiety. We've seen some horrible behaviour from people in shops, in airlines, and in other places. And all of this has been driven by emotion. It's become a survival of the fittest, and with that breeds selfish behaviours. And we're seeing that. Now, these major changes to the world that we know are going to have repercussions for a long time. We're going to see businesses close. We're going to see sporting leagues falter. And we're going to see people and we're going to see unemployment rise. And so it's no wonder that we're seeing these self-preservation instincts. The fear, the anxiety is absolutely real. And when we're acting in this limbic or the emotional state, we will often react purely from an emotional instinct. Now, for transparency, my business will be affected. I've already had to cancel workshops. I've already had to had group training sessions with organisations cancelled, postponed. Let's talk about it at another opportunity. So I will already see income that is going to be challenging to maintain in some of those areas. Yes, I know I can go virtual, and I do a lot of my work or a good percentage of my work virtually now, but that's reliant on people being in a financial state also to be able to do that. But I know the environment out there isn't an environment of logic. It isn't an environment of reason. It's an environment that's being induced by panic, stress, and it's driven from fear and anxiety. And in times like this, we need leadership. And this is where conscious leadership is an absolute choice that we make. Now, I could be panicking like everybody else. Well, sorry, not everybody else. I could be panicking and acting in the way that we've seen, some of those worst case scenarios. I do have a fear for my business, my future, the future of people that are close to me. I do have that fear. But conscious leadership is the choice that we make, and everyone has the ability to be a conscious leader. And this is what I would be encouraging for you today while we face these uncertain times. So how do we do that? Step number one, we need to focus on what we can control. There is so much shit happening around us that we have no control. No control. We cannot dictate or even know to some extent what our government, wherever you are in the world, what your government is going to decree as from tomorrow. We have no reason to believe that what they've decreed for today, starting first thing in the morning, is going to be in place by the afternoon. It is natural to be nervous when we have this lack of control. Control is one of those key things that we get really defensive about. That certainty of life, that certainty of knowing what to do. But when we find ourselves straying and starting to become anxious or fearful around what could be, or listening to rumour and innuendo around what could be, that's where we need to stop, and that's where we need to reflect, and that's where we need to refocus back on what we can control. So if you're worried financially, what can you control? You can control your current numbers. You can look at reducing your spending. You can look at alternative levels of income. You can look at those things. You can look at your possessions maybe and see what you can offload on eBay. You can control communicating with your financial institute. You can communicate, if you're in business, with your client base. Those things are in your control. Worrying about what's going to happen next week is just energy that's being exerted on something that you have very little control. Focus on what you can control. Take the time to review your business. Take the time to review your team. Take your time to look for the opportunity. Every single business person that I've mentored, coached, participated in workshops, always has this list of things that may be sitting in their mind that they've always wanted to do, but have never done it. And they may not have done it because of reasons like, they're just too busy delivering. They didn't have the time to do the adequate research. So it's something that maybe sits on a whiteboard at best or in the back of their mind. Now is probably the time to be digging those things out and really having a look at them and exploring and doing the work that you need to be doing. That's what you can control. Focus on the controllables. Number 2 is to communicate clearly and be controlled in that communication. Be aware that in these times, people are looking for calmness amongst the calamity. The centered voice when everything is falling down around you. You're the voice. You be that voice. You are the calmness in the calamity. And that comes through communicating clearly and calmly. You want to be the calmness in the storm. Now, and step number 3, listen only to informed and trusted sources. There's enough misinformation and rumour out there. And the expectations from your business team, from your network, is that it cannot come from you. The situation is constantly evolving. The situation is 100% dynamic. And as a leader, you need to remain agile and flexible enough to navigate through the inevitable changes. What you're doing today may be completely different to what you start doing tomorrow morning. And our ability to change with that is critical. And finally, the key is to make decisions, to actually make a decision. Sitting on your hands and waiting for decisions to be made for you or around you, or waiting until if the decisions are tough, and especially in this time and place, decisions are incredibly tough. John Maxwell says as a leader, we have to take responsibility to make decisions. The key is to make the decision, and then we manage that decision. So even if the decision you're making turns out tomorrow to be the wrong decision, that's cool. You make another decision to change it. But it really is about making decisions. Not making a decision is ultimately making a decision, because you made a decision not to make a decision. So I really want you to think about those 4 key points. Focus on the controllables, communicate clearly, calmly, and confidently. Listen only to informed and trusted sources, and make the decisions that you need to make. Don't prolong the agony. Don't prolong decision making. Make a decision, and then you manage that decision. And that's the way you create conscious leadership during a crisis. I know you have it in you. I know that at the end of the day, we're going to come out of this. I know that we are facing one hell of a ride, one hell of a corner on the racetrack. But we want to be in a position, because of our leadership, because of the way that we've responded, that as we come out of this corner, we're going to be able to put our foot down like nobody's business. Now, I'm not going to rattle through our sponsors today at all. So what I do want to share with you is that at the moment, I'm offering from Think and Grow Business 60 minutes of my time to help you get clarity around some of those decisions, some of that, the way forward for you. And all you have to do is go to thinkandgrowbusiness.com.au, click on book a discovery session, and you'll see that 60-minute clarity call. Book a time in, let's have a chat. Let's put our heads together and let's really make some decisions for you, for your business, for your team, that will help you navigate your way through what we face. So, as per always, conscious leaders stand tall, they're stronger, they're braver, they're wiser, and you'll even be more so when we get through all this. And in times like this, it's even more important to listen to the golden rule. Just don't be an arsehole. I'll see you next week.